Hello Algebra 1 class, this is Mr. An. For today's classwork, we're going to do Quick Check 3A, 3B, and number 2. Alright, Quick Check 3A. Unlike the questions you've done before, you're going to notice that there's a coefficient next to the first term. So instead of it being 1, it's now 2. So it makes it a bit more complicated, but there are two ways we can solve these kind of questions, the first method and the second method. You do need to know how to do both, because sometimes you have to use both, sometimes you can only use one. In this case, we are able to use both. Alright, the first way you can actually do this is to first notice that the coefficients are all divisible by 2. So we're going to factor out 2 from each term. If I factor out 2 from the first term, 2 divided by 2 is 1, which is why here it's 1. Negative 12 divided by 2 is negative 6, which is why here it's negative 6. And then 10 divided by 2 is 5, which is why it's 5 here. Now this looks more familiar to us since we've done questions like this before we left, and also there was a video uploaded to help you. So we know that the factors of v squared are v times v, and the factors of 5 are going to be 1 and 5. Now notice here that it's going to be negative 1 and negative 5 because it must multiply into a positive 5, but at the same time I need it to add to a negative 6. And we find that it actually does. V times negative 1 is negative v. V times negative 5 is negative 5v. Add them together to get the negative 6v that I wanted. So in the end, when you write the answer, don't forget the 2. This becomes v minus 1. This across becomes v minus 5, and you're done. Now the second method is new. It's a new method that I need you to become familiar with. And the only difference between the method that we learned in the past is that it's not going to be v squared anymore, it's 2v squared. So excuse me, you're going to get the factors v and 2v, because v times 2v will give you 2v squared. There are no other possible factors here. For number 10, it's going to be the same. It's going to be negative 1, negative 10, negative 2, negative 5. It's going to be negative because they have to multiply into a positive number, but at the same time I need them to add to a negative number, as you can see here. So I made the negative. But notice this part. I flipped everything upside down here, because if I want to find all the possible cases for multiplication, if I look at this, 2v only gets to be multiplied to negative 1 and negative 2. So I need it to be also multiplied to negative 10 and negative 5, which are also factors of 10. So I have to flip over the entire possibility over so that I can try out every possible route. You're going to cross multiply and get this, get this, get this, get this. But of course, the only ones that work are this one and this one. And you might be wondering, Mr. An, why are there two answers? Well, let me explain. In the first case, we have 2v and v. V is multiplied to negative 10 to get this. 2v is multiplied to negative 1 to get this, and they do add up to negative 12v, which we wanted. So when we write the answer, we write it as this. In the second case, where we also got negative 12v, as we can see here, 2v times negative 5 is negative 10v. V times negative 2 is negative 2v, which also gives me negative 12v. So if I write this across, that's v minus 5, which gives us this expression, and 2v minus 2, which gives me this expression. And these are not the same expressions, as you can see here. but as you'll soon find out, they're equal. If I look at the second binomial, you can see that they're both divisible by 2. So I'm going to take the 2 out, and that 2 becomes this 2. 2v divided by 2 becomes v. Negative 10 divided by 2 becomes negative 5. And as you can see here, this is the exact same thing as the original answer we had. Same thing with this case. If I have v minus 5 times 2v minus 2, I can take out the 2 from this second binomial. If I divide 2v by 2, I get v. If I divide negative 2 by 2, I get negative 1. And notice how this answer is exactly the same thing as this answer. And so we're done. I'm going to try this one more time with 3b, because in 3b's case, I'm going to attempt to factor out the 2 from all 3 terms. I can't factor out 4 because 4 does not go into 14 or 16. So I'm only going to factor out 2. Once I factor out 2, so 4 divided by 2 is 2, 14 divided by 2 is 7, 6 divided by 2 is 3, I have to use the second method because I can no longer take this number out to make it 1, which I liked, or which you liked, since that's what we worked on Monday. So we're going to use the second method, 2y squared. There are 2 factors, y and 2y. Thankfully for 3, there are only 2 factors, 1 and 3. I'm going to again have to flip this over because I need 2y to be able to multiply to all possible factors. Notice here, this time it's going to both be plus since they have to add up to a positive 7. So 2y times 1 is 2y. Y times 3 is 3y. I get 5y. That's not what I want since I wanted positive 7y. I try the second case and it works out. So when I write my answer, I write y plus 3. I write 2y plus 1. And don't forget the 2 we factored out, and we're done. The last case I want to go over is number 2. In number 2, you cannot do step 1. 7, 50, and 7 do not share a factor. Sure, 7 and 7 share a factor, but 7 and 50 does not share a factor. So you have to go straight to method 2. What are the factors of 7d squared? Only d and 7d, thankfully. What are the factors of 7? 1 and 7, that's it. However, I need 7d to be able to multiply to every possible factor, so I need 7 as well. So we flipped it over as well. So I'm going to try both times. D times 7 is 7d. 7d times 1 is 7d. I add them together, I get 14d. This is not what I want since I want positive 50d. So I'm going to try 7. 7d times 7 is 49d. D times 1 is going to be d, and I get 50d, which is exactly what I wanted. So when I write my answer, I write across d plus 7 and 70 plus 1. And that's your answer. All right, good luck on the end review.